Hello literature connoisseurs. Let's begin. Chapter 14 opens with Rayford and Chloe as they return home. Chloe makes a big deal out of wanting to drive Rayford's car home. He finally agrees after he retrieves his phone from it. He mentions that he wants Hattie to eat with them, and Chloe makes a comment about her refusing to cook. This seems to be a knock against feminism but is overall irrelevant. Rayford suggests Chinese food because he knows that is Hattie's favorite food. Chloe seems surprised and figures the imaginary affair was actually serious. Rayford deflects by saying he knows the favorite foods of all of his co-workers. Chloe now complains that it is eerie to drive her mother's car because although she doesn't believe in ghosts, she still feels her mother's presence. Maybe she should have taken some classes in psychology because those feelings can be described by the stages of grief. Scene changes to Buck after Nicolae's speech. Someone recognizes Buck and he tries to lie about his supposed death. Chaim appears and expresses that both Nicolae and him were sad to hear about Buck's death. Buck asks Chaim to pull some strings and get him the interview with Nicolae. The authors go on to list mundane things Nicolae does as if we are supposed to believe they are significant. An example is he looks people in the eye when he talks to them. The authors must be easily impressed if they think this is anything other than unimpressive. Carpathia gives another speech on the history of the United Nations during the Cold War era. So far nothing Carpathia has said or done has been significant other than stating he has a photographic memory, but it is not like no one has ever had one before. However, his memory seems to be better than anything Jesus, if he existed, had. Remembering that Jesus cursed a fig tree because he could not remember when figs were in season. Nicolae goes on to say he's asking for a scientific committee to form in order to investigate a scientific reason for the disappearances. He summarizes a hypothesis, that he claims is what science says, that the disappearances were the result of nuclear radiation. Supposedly the radiation mixed with some unknown chemical in the atmosphere and an electromagnetic pulse ignited it. The main problem is that the authors seem to know very little about science, but they need to straw man the scientific community in order to boost their own theory about the rapture. While the so-called scientific explanation seems implausible, it is still on equal footing to the other theories about the rapture and space aliens. If there were a scientific explanation, there would be evidence to point to the science being correct. The excuse, God did it, proves nothing other than empty meaningless words with nothing to back it up. A reporter asks Nicolae about his opinion if the disappearances were the result of the rapture. Nicolae deflects by first stating he respects everyone's beliefs, blah blah blah. Unity and brotherhood, blah blah blah. Then he finally gets to the topic by saying he disagrees that the disappearances were the result of the rapture. He states the basis of his feelings of how a god would act in his opinion if one existed. Basically the authors straw man Nicolae as he tries to steel man their god. A steel man argument is simply the opposite of a straw man. It is a technique that presents the other person's case in the strongest possible form. You try to understand their position as well as possible, and then present it in a way that makes it as difficult as possible to refute. Nicolae goes on to say that he has been asked to speak at an international religious gathering. This is absurd because so far there is nothing that even remotely connects him to religion. This is like asking a janitor to give a lecture on new medical treatments to cardiologists. By evening the media began to nickname Nicolae, Saint Nick. The media goes on to commit yellow journalism by stating things that are not evidently true. While Carpathia's speech was just a long and boring history lesson about the UN, they claim he spoke about love, unity, and peace. There is no news like fake news. Buck gets promised a 30-minute uninterrupted interview with Nicolae. Carpathia and his boss, Steve, demands to accompany him. The media shows pictures of Nicolae and Jonathan S. standing side by side. This seems to confirm to Buck that Nicolae is a patsy. Scene changes to Rayford and he arrives home and learns that his house was robbed. They call the police and learn that crime is up 200%. He also learned that the police are helpless to do anything. For a nonsensical reason Chloe asks her dad to get another copy of the rapture tape from the church. Christianity can only reach people by fear and intimidation tactics. Rather than provide proof or evidence, instead the authors need to resort to scaring Chloe by having some supposed thieves break into their home. Chloe then suddenly laughs as she comments that maybe the thieves will watch the rapture tape, as if they could be bothered to do that. As if watching that might convert the robbers into becoming Christian. This is a common ploy by Christians in order to make themselves feel better when bad things happen. Making up illogical, improbable stories helps them cope rather than facing the truth of the matter. With atheism gaining popularity as surveys done every year, it becomes clear that the spell that religions once had on the masses no longer holds sway. People are breaking away and feel better about admitting the truth that they no longer believe. Though it is still dangerous in certain places to openly not follow the area's religion. The numbers are still in decline even though they cannot openly admit it. Church has become a fashion symbol to many, and many still play the part in order to appear religious. They sit in the pews and squawk like parrots as they play the parts of their religion. Christians might say that their holy book predicts that in the last days that people will stop believing in their religion. This does not make their religion true or their Bible true. How many other religions died out when people stopped believing in them? Egyptology. The Greek gods. The Roman gods. The Old Testament mentions the popularity of Baal worship, though that religion is no longer practiced today. How about Molech, who practiced child sacrifice? Moloch was the Canaanite god of fertility associated with the notorious practice of child sacrifice. He was also commonly associated with Baal Hammon, the chief weather god of ancient Carthage, modern-day Tunisia. However, he is considered to be a false god in Abrahamic religions. This ends chapter 14. See you next time for Left Behind chapter 15.